In the previous video, we were using set timeout and in parentheses the name of the function, comma, and then a timeout in milliseconds to delay code before it was actually called. And we would cancel the timeout by using clear timeout and then in parentheses the timeout ID that was created. Today in this video, we're going to call code multiple times with set interval. And so the function to call set interval, it's set interval and then in parentheses the name of the function, comma, and the amount of interval in milliseconds. I have three buttons here that are going to call three functions. The three functions that they call are actually going to use this set interval. It's going to create a variable that's going to be set equal to set interval, and then it's going to call another function, which will be the function name here to replace func, and then we're going to have a time in milliseconds in which whatever function is going to be called, it's going to be called over and over and over again with this interval delay in between function calls. So I'm going to click function 3 so you can see how that works, and then I'm going to open up the clock down here so that you can see that it's approximately 6 seconds between function calls. Function 2 is going to be approximately 4 seconds between function calls, and function 1 is going to be called repeatedly about every 2 seconds. So let's try function 3, pull up the clock, check the time. When you start hearing the audio,
function 3. Function
6,
3. Function
6,
3. Function
6.
3.
Okay, so I counted about 6 seconds in between that, and I click this stop it button down here. I'll click reload page, and I'll do the same thing with function 2. We should see about 4 seconds in between the audio. Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm listening for the audio as I look at the clock.
Function 2.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Function 2.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Function 2.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Function 2.
All right, so we got about 4s there. I'm going to reload the page, or hit stop it, and then hit reload the page. Do the same thing with 1. This should be every 2 seconds.
Function 1.
1, 2.
Function 1.
1, 2.
Function 1.
1, 2.
Function 1.
1, 2.
Function 1.
Okay, so you see how those work. Each button click creates a set interval that calls a function repeatedly with the interval of time in between each function call. All right, let's check out the body. Let's check out the elements in the body. We've got a field set here, and after the field set we have this pink button that says reload page. And to create that pink button, it's input type equals button, ID equals reload page, the value equals reload page, and the on-click event calls the reload page function. After the pink button, we have a div here, and inside that div, we have another button, the maroon button. Input type equals button, ID equals stop it, value equals stop it, and on click, we have 3 different things chained. We have clear interval, parentheses, interval ID 1, semicolon. Then we have clear interval, parentheses, interval ID 2, semicolon. And finally, we have clear interval, parentheses, interval ID 3, semicolon. So we've chained 3 different function calls there with the one on click with the stop it button. So that means that whichever function happens to be running at the time, by clicking stop it, it's going to clear any of those 3. All right, so then we have the end of the div, and if you remember the previous video, I originally had my div with the hidden keyword in the opening div tag, and that way you didn't even see the red button at all. Well, I'm not going to need to hide that div anymore because we're going to want to be able to access the stop it button whenever we want. Underneath that div, we've got the three audios, the three OGG files that you hear. If I open them all up, you see audio ID1, the source inside of that is src equals f1.ogg. And the audio 2, audio with the ID of 2, the source is src equals f2.ogg. And then the audio with the ID of 3 has a source src equal to f3.ogg. Again, you could use MP3 files. You don't have to use OGG files. OGG files are just a smaller file size. All right, so those are the three audio tags that we don't see because we didn't put controls in here. We don't need control in here. That, let's see, we'll close that div. There's that button. Let's open up the field set so we can look at the elements inside the field set here on top of the pink button. There's the legend, which is the caption of the field set. And it says calling code multiple times with set interval parentheses func comma interval in parentheses. And set interval func comma interval is surrounded with these B tags, which gives it bold and blue. After that, we have a button, input type equals button, ID equals the number 1, value equals function 1, and on click equals repeat. I create a function called, repeat 1. So we'll go over that new function here once I get into the script tag. The next button, input type equals button, ID equals the number 2, value equals function 2, on click is going to call the repeat 2 function. The third button, input type equals button, ID equals 3, value equals function 3, and on click equals, and it's going to call the repeat 3 function. There's that break tag. After the break tag, we have a text area with an ID equal to box. It's set to disabled so the user can't type in here. And then we have the end of the field set. And again, there's that pink button underneath the field set. So we have went over everything in the body. So I can close the body up now. We've looked at all the elements in the body. Let's look at the style real quick. For the text area, we still have a margin top, a width, a height, a padding, a resize, a border, a color, and a font size. Those are the settings for all of those parts of the text area. The input, it's for our buttons. We have a width, a background color, a border, and a padding for all of our buttons. For the field set, we have a width. For the button that has the special ID of reload page, which is our pink button, we have a width. We have a background image possible setting, but I don't have a background image, so that's kind of like not working. We have a background repeat and a background position, which again, because I don't have it really pointing to an image, it kind of doesn't mean anything right now. The color maroon is the color of the font. The background color is obviously pink. It has a font size and a font family. Then the maroon button, we gave that maroon button an ID of stop it, and it's got a width, a background color, a font size, and a font family. And then again for the B tag is automatically going to bold whatever text is inside of it, and I just added a little extra by giving it a color of blue. Alright, so that's all the style. I can close out of the style now. Let's look at the script. These statements I commented out because they will run these functions as soon as the page loads, and I'll do that at the end of this video. I want to focus on running this based on the user's button clicks first. So we've got 4 statements that I've commented out. Var interval ID1 equals set interval. It's going to call function 1, comma, every 2 seconds. The next one that's commented out is var interval ID2 equals set interval, and that's going to call function 2 every 4 seconds. The next one that's commented out is var interval ID3 equals set interval, and that's going to call function 3 every 6 seconds. And lastly, the thing that's commented out is var interval ID4 equals set interval, and then it's going to call the reload page function every 8 seconds. I'm probably not even going to reset that because that's just going to cause an infinite loop, and I don't want an infinite loop. But if I do uncomment it, the stop it button should stop that as well. Then there's var message equals an empty string, var counter equals 0, and then we're creating 3 variables for our interval IDs. Var interval ID 1, var interval ID 1, interval ID 2, interval ID 3. So with one var keyword, we created 3 interval IDs. This is new. Function repeat 1. This is the function that gets called when we click our function 1 button. The on click is set equal to repeat 1. This is doing the exact same thing I just told you I commented out so that it would not happen at page load. This is going to force it to happen with a button click, the on click event. So we have, because we created the interval ID 1, interval ID 2, and interval ID 3 here, all we need to do is set it now. We don't have to use the var keyword again. So interval ID 1 equals, and now we're going to use our little blue code up here. Interval ID 1 equals set interval, function 1, comma 2000. So this repeat 1 is going to create our set interval. It's going to call function 1 every 2000 seconds. Next we have repeat 2, function repeat 2, interval ID 2 equals set interval, and in parentheses function 2 comma 4000. So every 4 seconds function 2 will be called repeatedly. Next we have function repeat 3. That's going to take interval ID 3 and set that equal to set interval parentheses function 3 comma 6000. So every 6 seconds we are going to have function 3 called when this function 3 on click event calls repeat 3. Now let's look at the functions themselves. Function 1, we increment our variable called counter. This is not anything new. Document.getElement by ID 1.style.background color equals green, document.getElement by ID 1.style.color equals white. So when this function 1 button is clicked, when the function 1 button is clicked, the repeat 1 function is called. The repeat 1 function creates our set interval that calls function 1. So the this button calls repeat 1, and repeat 1 calls function 1 every 2000 seconds. And we use the variable interval ID 1 when we want to cancel that repeating function call. So it's getting a little complicated, but really not too bad, because I've got enough repetition here that it'll start to sink in. So when function 1 is called every 2 seconds, we're going to increment our counter up by 1. Our button will be turned, initially a button will be turned green and white, and we want to make sure the other 2 buttons stay gray and black. So we're going to do these sentences to make sure this stays gray and black, and these statements will make sure the 3rd button stays gray and black. Then we're going to take our variable message. We're going to use plus equals because every time the function is called again, we want to add on another line that's going to show up here. So we're going to add the value of counter. So the first time that this function is called, you're going to see a number 1, and then you're going to see this this right parenthesis, a space, then high function 1, and then backslash n is going to drop down to the next line, and all of that's going to go in the variable called message. The next time function is called in 2 seconds, it's going to tack this counter, which will then be 2, and say high function 1 on the next line, and so on and so forth until you get a whole bunch of lines that say high function 1, high function 1, high function 1 with a counter to the left of it. document.getElementById box dot value equals message. So whatever value we get for the MSG variable, it's going to start popping up here in our text area that has the ID of box. And then this statement, document.getElementById 1.play, this is going to play my OGG file that says function 1. Return true means we're going to jump out of this function now. All right, so there was the end of function 1. Function 2 is the same as function 1, more or less. We are going to increment the counter. We are going to make sure that the first button is gray and black. We're going to make sure the second button is green and white. We're going to make sure the third button is gray and black. We're going to increment the value of message to say counter, and then the counter is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, or whatever the counter variable is at this time if we're bouncing off of one function to the next. And then it's going to say hi function 2 and go down to the next line. I'm going to take document.getElementById box.value equals message so that we can populate it in here in the text area. Document.getElementById 2.play, we're going to play the audio file that says function 2 and return true to get out of it. Close up function 2, take a peek at function 3. We're going to increment the counter. We're going to make sure the first button is gray and black. We're going to make sure the second button is gray and black. We're going to make sure the third button is green and white. We're going to take our message plus equals counter plus hi function 3 \n so that we can go to a new line every time. Document.getElementById box.value equals message so that we can populate our message value in our text area. Document.getElementById 3.play means we're going to play the third OGG file, return true, and we're done with the function 3. Function reload page. Two statements. Document.getElementById box.value equals an empty string to make sure that when we click reload page, the pink button, that whatever information is in that box is going to disappear. And then window.location.reload. That's the end of that function. So I already showed you by clicking function 3 and showing you the clock and then hitting stop it that each one of these buttons sets a set interval and then calls the function that we want each of these buttons to represent. Let me uncomment out this. That means that var interval id1 equals set interval function 1, comma 2000. That means that this is going to run without clicking a button at all. So let me save it and let me refresh the page.
Function 1. Function 1.
So here we have function 1 running all by
Function
itself because,
Function 1.
let me hit stop it.
Function 1.
Because 2 seconds after the page loaded, this line of code right here created the set interval, which waited 2 seconds and then called function 1 for you. You didn't have to click a button. So let's do the same. Took too much off. Control Z. I just want to take the 2 lines off. Let's add the next one. Let's hit reload page.
Function 1.
Reload page. Now both function 1 and function 2 should start.
Function 2. Function 1. Function 2. Function 1. Function 2.
Okay, let's stop that. Reload the page. And let's take the last one. Reload. Now all 3 functions should run. This one after 2000 milliseconds, this one after 4000 milliseconds, and this one after 6000 milliseconds. Let's see the strangeness that goes on then. Let's hit reload.
Function 1. Function 2. Function 3. Function 2. Function 1. Function 2. Function 1. Function 2.
Okay, hit the stop it button. So we have function high function 1, high function 1, high function 2, high function 1, high function 3, high function 1, high function 2, high function 1, high function 1, high function 2, high function 3, high function 1, high function 1, high function 2. So you can see as you get more functions that are kind of popping up with their own interval, they've each got a different interval, that the more functions that you have going on at the same time but with different intervals, the more it kind of seems kind of random. It doesn't, if we had all of these run at the exact same interval, or closer to being the same, it would look more robotic. This almost gives an almost random feel to it. Kind of reminds you of the Tiger Woods golf game where the audience in the background, they don't all have the same animation, but some of them do. Some of them are using the same function and animating in the same time, doing the same animation. It's kind of funny, but not everybody. If you had 20 people in the background and they all bent over at the exact same time and they all jumped up at the exact same time, it looks less natural. And so the more intervals that you have with functions popping off at different times, it gives a little bit more of a natural feel to it. Um, so let's see, I don't think there's anything else. Oh, I could open this one up. Var interval ID 4 equals set interval, and it's going to reload the page every 8,000 seconds. We could run that and see what that does. It's going to give us an infinite loop, which I'm going to have to hit stop it in order to stop, but we could do that, which I really don't see that that's adding any value one way or the other. I don't think it's really doing anything any different.
Function 1. Function 2. Function 3.
Oh,
Function 1.
okay.
Function 2.
It reloaded the page.
Function 3.
So it did add something different.
Function 1. Function 2. Function 3.
Yeah. Let me
Function
hit
1.
stop it so that it could stop that. What it did was it allowed this to run,
Function 1.
it allowed this to
Function
run,
2.
and it allowed this to
Function
run.
3.
But 2 seconds after that, it reset the whole
Function
page
1.
and started it all over again.
Function 2. Function 3.
And this stop it I thought was supposed to stop that. It's not stopping it. Oh, maybe it did now.
Function 1.
Oh, no, it didn't stop it.
Function 2.
Let's reload the page, stop it. Actually, that's going to keep going. I have to look at my stop it button
Function
because
1.
I don't think I cleared out interval
Function 2.
ID 4.
Function 3.
And that's going to drive me nuts. Let me turn that off. Let me look up my stop it and see if I have a clear to interval ID 4. Repeat 1, repeat 2, repeat 3. Is it my reload page? No. Body. It's got to be this one. Yep, it's my stop it button. I cleared the interval for 1, 2, and 3, but I didn't clear the interval for the interval ID 4. So what I'll do is I'll highlight that and I'll copy it, and right after the semicolon I'll hit Control V to add it, copy it, clear interval ID, we will change that to interval ID 4. Okay, so now I can clear all 4 of those. Let's run it one more time. Let me go back up here. So all of these are running as soon as the page loads.
Function 3. Function 1. Function 2. Function 3.
Okay, So it's
Function 1.
reloading after the third function.
Function 3.
I'm going to hit stop it, and it should stop everything. And it did. Okay, so depending on what kind of functionality you want, if you want something to start happening the moment a particular page loads, then you would do it like this. If you do not like that functionality at all, and you don't want any kind of anything to happen until a user clicks on something or does something, then you would comment these out, because you don't want it to automatically do anything from page load. Now it will only happen when you click a button.
Function 2. Function 2.
All right, so with that, I'm going to stop it and I'm going to conclude this video. And I have a few more pages to read about animating elements and a few things to try out. Responding to user actions, responding to clicks is with some different things there. The mouse move event, and then somewhere down the line it's going to have me try to work with a different game.